All right, so Module 11, last new content of this course. The remainder of the course will be working on your project. So, congratulations on making it this far. A lot of material that we've covered, and now the material we're going to cover is about building that business case. Okay, so I am going to show you something here I'm going to talk through it. I want you to keep in mind something though, and I'll say this a couple of times to make sure that you're listening. The actual visual template here that you're going to see isn't great. Okay? This is a very old slide deck. I did this probably a decade ago now. This is probably about 2010 era. Okay? We have much nicer ways to present information today. Okay? But I wanted to give you kind of an idea of the types of content you probably want to consider having into your slide deck when you're making a business case. Okay? So to start off with, you're going to have some sort of title slide. You want to catch my attention. You don't want it to be too busy, but at the same time, you want it to be visually appealing because it's the first thing that people are going to see, and it's the thing that's going to be on the screen when people walk into the meeting room to do a presentation. So you want it to be visually appealing. This is not very visually appealing. So you want to come up with something, and you can use stock images, you can create your own image, whatever you want to do. But something that's visually appealing, and you want to make sure that you can read the text in the final version. So I did get a slide deck, not for this class, but for another class recently, where I couldn't read any of the text in the presentation because the contrast wasn't sufficient. And I had to literally go through and change all of the slide design in order to read the text on it. I can tell you right now, if I have to do that, you're not going to get a good score on this. So you've got to make it where I can go through in a reasonable amount of time to understand what you're trying to convey. Okay, it needs to be professional and it needs to make sense. So don't jump all over the place. Have an agenda up front, okay, right here. Have an agenda that lays out what is the purpose of this presentation. Now, again, this is not very nice looking. I have a feeling it's partially because of the software switching over time and then the colors. I know the colors weren't orange back when I originally did this, so I don't know what's going on there. But being very concise about what our agenda is about. What are we going to talk about? Okay, so you're going to talk about your specific items. I'm not going to tell you specifically what you need to talk about to me. Okay. If I did that, everybody's would be the same, and I'd be bored after about 5 or 6 presentations. And then I'd start judging presentations based on what I saw previously, and I don't want to do that. So by not giving very much in the way of specific details, I open it up to your creative freedoms. Okay. Now, you're more than welcome, after you have something together at a very basic level, you're more than welcome to schedule time with me starting in week 12. So not next week, but the week after, you can start scheduling time with me to go over your project materials, assuming you have something. So if you come to me, you haven't even started yet, that's not an effective use of your time or my time, okay? You need to actually start thinking about this, come up with your architecture, come up with your slides, and be ready to ask me specific questions. If you say, what do you think of my slides? That's not sufficient enough, okay? You need to think about questions where you're not sure about, okay? I want to prepare you for your career, and holding your hand is not going to prepare you for that, okay? Now, in the case of my presentation, we were presenting something a little bit different. So I was presenting a private cloud strategy because we were trying to shift from homegrown data centers to building a private cloud for our whole organization to use, okay? Because at the time there was only Amazon, and Amazon was very costly for us. Okay? So I started off with the problem statement. Why do we need a private cloud? So you should start off with some sort of problem statement. Okay? Whatever that problem statement is, that should be the first thing in your agenda. Present what our business problem is up front before you talk about the solutions. Okay? Then, right after we present the business problem, we might need to define a bit more about that business problem. So in my case, I asked the question of why do we need private cloud? There was a business driver behind it, and I'll get into that in a second. Then I have to talk about what is a private cloud, because maybe the executives I'm talking to don't have a clue what that is. Okay? So we've got to at least educate them at a high level. Okay? We don't want to bombard them with information. We can certainly provide, and I like to do this at the end, I like to have an appendix. And you are welcome to have an appendix with as many slides as you want. But your core presentation needs to be confined to the requirements that are specified in the syllabus. Okay? Now, in my case, I wanted to let the executives know what a private cloud was, and then I'm going to talk about 5 basic areas so they kind of have an idea. Okay? My first area was the benefits and high-level architecture. The second area was we're going to do the business case to consolidate our data centers and infrastructure. The third area we're going to talk about is our automation time to market comparison. Okay? Then we're going to talk about the cost of public versus private. Then we're going to talk about automation labor. And then how do we achieve our objectives? So what are we proposing? Okay? So that's when we start talking about our proposal. We didn't go right in and start proposing. Okay? If you start proposing without defining the business problem and explaining what you're talking about, you're going to lose the people, and they're going to be playing on their phones. They're going to be doing something else. They're not going to be paying attention to you. Okay? Now we've started laying out our plan. Then we lay out a when. In this case, is what I would do is kind of a deployment timeline of how long you think this is going to take, and I've got an example in here of how you can structure that. And then the last thing is the cost by phase. So here's the deployment timeline, and then this is what it's going to cost us for each one of those phases. Okay, that's very critical for us. Okay, now start off with why do we need this, and you want to have not a lot of text on the slides. If there's too much text, people aren't going to read it. And I swear, I just was grading something in another class, and every slide was crammed. Every bit of white space had text on it. It was like they wrote a paper on every single slide. You can't do that, okay? So figure out a way to visually present it, and you could use SmartArt and PowerPoint or whatever else it is, okay? Hold on, let me turn off notifications. Do not disturb. Okay, I did little boxes to differentiate the challenge and then how are we going to overcome that challenge. That's the core of this slide. One slide of why are we proposing this? What's the business problem? Okay? And so why are we saying that private cloud is going to solve our business problem? It enables a rapid deployment of infrastructure that improves time to market while providing a fully supported and secure IT model. Okay? That's the language that I crafted with one of our executives in IT. Okay? And this one slide alone took us 2 months to develop, okay? Because we couldn't agree on it. You don't have 2 months, so you need to think of a concise way to state things. Your business challenges, bullet points are a good way, but you could also do like a separate box for each challenge. Okay, depends on how visual you are. Canva is a great way to do visualization. SmartArt's another simple way. Okay? And SmartArt in here, you can take text and you can literally convert it to SmartArt. Okay, so if I was doing that here, I could convert it and boom. I obviously don't want to do that here. All right, so the business challenges. We can't deploy things fast enough to meet the business needs. Our dev groups are forced to host externally. This is high cost. I mean, these are not what your challenges are. You need to look at the hypothetical for your challenges, okay? And then you need to extrapolate from that. But my challenges for my business problem are here, so you can see what mine were, and then you can see my thoughts on how we can change this, okay, at a high level. Once we're beyond that, now we've got to talk about what is a private cloud, or what is, your proposed solution. In your case, you're proposing cloud-based solutions in the public cloud. So you've got to think about, what does a cloud mean, okay? What are the characteristics of a cloud? And so we summarize them with one word each. Velocity. People think, oh, wow, velocity, we're going to be able to do things faster. And then I kind of explain what that means in one bullet point. Okay? Predictable. At the business I was at, predictability was a problem. One team would deliver something in 5 minutes. Another team would deliver the exact same thing in 3 months. The business couldn't predict it. Okay, compliance, value, and supported. Okay, yours is not going to necessarily be the exact same thing here. And this is why I'm really always nervous about sharing an example, is because someone is going to think this is what it needs to be and then get very boxed into that. No, this is my problem space, my solution. Your problem space is different. You're going with public cloud. I was going with private cloud. Okay. Now, then here we go. This is our first business case. We're going to rationalize our infrastructure by standardizing, consolidating, and reducing our technology components. Okay. And so here you can see that we have all of these different technologies over here in this data center, and all of these different technologies over here in this data center, all of these ones in this one, and all of these ones in this one. Okay. And now we're just going to consolidate to this cloud architecture. Again, this is 10 years old, so none of it really makes sense anymore, but the visualization and the general idea here should be similar for you. We're going to have some virtual machines. We're going to run on a couple of different platforms. In my case, there were 4 different platforms going down from, I don't know how many are here, maybe 10 or something like that. Okay, so we're consolidating the number of platforms. In your case, you might be proposing AWS and you might be proposing Microsoft. Okay, or maybe you're proposing GCP. So then we go on to the next part of the business case, which is the cost. Okay, and we've got to look at the total cost of ownership. So it's not just, what does a virtual machine cost me? It's, what do the virtual machines cost me? What do the database servers cost me? What does the networking cost me? Load balancers, IP addresses, software licenses, the people costs associated with this, support cost, whatever that might be. What is that cost? And then you can break it into a monthly cost, an annual cost. I don't care how you break it down, but be consistent. Okay. So you want to be able to achieve some level of cost savings. Okay. And you want to be able to manage it with your existing team or a smaller team potentially. Okay. And then I like to highlight the cost savings here. Okay. So here's what we were paying. Here's what we're paying now. And it's 531% savings. If I'm an executive and I look at this, I'm not necessarily looking at all of this other garbage on here, which in my view today, this is too much information on these boxes. But as an executive, I'm looking at, holy crap, that's a lot of savings. Okay. And then I have a couple of bullet points for each one. And so the good things, they've got a little checkbox icon. I just borrowed that from somewhere. And the things that are bad, I could have done a little red X, but I chose to do a sad face. I don't care what you do here. If I could do it over, I probably wouldn't have done a sad face. I probably would have made this more professional. Okay? And I would really encourage you to try to brand things all the same. So try to do common or at least compatible branding across your slide deck. Okay, so it looks professional. Now, the nicer you make this look, the more professional, the more opportunities for extra credit. Okay? If you just turn in a basic slide deck, you're going to get no extra credit, and if it's just plain and there's no pop to it, then you're probably going to be disappointed in your grade. Okay? Now, we move on to the business case using automation, and one of your tasks is to do automation. I actually had metrics on this. Okay? I knew how long it took one of my competitor teams to do the process. Okay? It took them 52 hours to build one server. Okay. So I knew that that was 52 hours, and here's a breakdown of the areas. I also knew that for that same team to build a virtual server took them 6 hours. But my team could actually, not including the request portion, could actually do the work in 25 minutes or less. Actually, we got this down even lower, but including the time for the user to make the request, 40 minutes. The reality is, 10 years ago, we were able to get this down to 5 minutes or less for anything. And we won an award for it from the organization. So this is a very impactful slide here. And then we also show what the cost is here versus the cost, okay? The savings. And so for this many servers, we saved 5.1 million in a year. Okay? Then we went on to the next piece of our business case. We're going to improve the time to market for the business. Okay? So today we've got all these manual steps. The whole process takes 8.5 weeks. Okay? If we were to fully realize our goal here, using automation and whatnot, we could go streamline the number of steps. You know, we've eliminated a number of steps here. And we can do it in 40 minutes. And we visualize this here. It's very easy to follow. Okay? If I look at this, I know nothing about automation. I can tell that we've eliminated 3 steps out of the process just by looking at it. Okay? And considerably shortened the time. And then the phases. Now, obviously the formatting is a little screwed up, but we were trying to break it into... Actually, these slides got switched around somehow. It should be like that. Let's go to this one first. We've got the timeline. Now, I've since learned how to do better timelines in this, but this is an example, okay? I'm showing high-level milestones, okay? And I'm showing it on, you know, a quarterly basis, an annual basis, whatever timeline makes sense. Probably not monthly, okay? If you're seeing you've got too much text on here, you need to break it down. Usually these are on a quarterly or a yearly basis, depending on how far out you're going, okay? You need to show the progress, where you're at, and then milestones. Okay? So how you do that is up to you, but this is just a general idea. You can find a lot of other examples online. And then the last thing is, for our phases, what are we going to do? And when are we going to do it? Okay? And so you can see when this is going to happen, what's in scope, what are our success metrics. This is very important. How do we measure to make sure that we were successful with each phase? Okay. And then lastly, what is our cost for each phase? Okay. And so this is very critical. I want to see what are your success metrics. I want to see what are your costs, okay, for each phase of however you do this. How you do the phases, I could care less here, okay? Just you figure out something that makes sense based on the business problem, okay? So make sure that you take a look at this, okay? I'm not providing the actual slide deck because all that's going to happen is someone's going to copy it or people are going to start thinking they have to do this exact format. So I'm not providing this as a template. You need to create your own, okay? That's it. Now, about your pitch. Okay, so now you're going to get your slides together. You need to be able to present your pitch in 1 minute. Okay, your elevator pitch is what you would do if you were to get in the elevator with Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or Tim Cook or someone. Okay, whoever it might be, and you're in the elevator and you know it takes a minute to get up to their penthouse suite of where they work at. Okay. What are you going to tell them? What's going to catch their interest? You got to have that rehearsed. Okay? And it needs to be no longer than a minute. And if it's less than a minute, you got a little bit of a buffer. Look in the syllabus for the details. If it's over, you got a little bit of a buffer there too. But if you can't get it down to a minute, practice it until you can get it down to as close to a minute as possible. Okay? I'm not joking. I will take points off. You've got to learn to be able to do this in a concise manner. When you're doing your presentation, rehearse it, be confident. If you find yourself saying a lot, you probably want to try re-recording it. Okay? Try to avoid using filler words if you can. Okay? I would suggest that you consider doing editing on it as well. So if you do find yourself, doing a lot of takes, you might consider downloading some of the many different types of free video editing software that are out there and doing editing on the video. Okay. Do it in a quiet area. Make sure that you're audible on it. You don't want to be in a situation where I can't understand you. Okay. I will be assessing it using the COBA rubric, and the slides will be effectively using the COBA written rubric. Okay. But then my own assessment of the slide material as well. But the oral piece will be 100% based on the COBA standard rubric that everybody else uses for oral presentations. Okay. So I would suggest dressing professionally. Okay. You don't have to wear a suit or anything like that. I mean, you're at home. Who cares, right? But dress professionally for it. Okay. So, don't come to the video dressed up like you just left the gym. Okay. Or, you just woke up and you're in your pajamas still, that sort of thing. If you do that, the COBA rubric requires that I take off points for that. Okay. No exceptions. So make sure you're wearing something that's professional. Okay. Use your best judgment. I'm not going to be able to answer, well, what about this outfit, Professor? Can I wear this outfit? No, I'm not going to be able to judge that for you, okay? The COBA rubric states you should be wearing something that's professional. I think it's like, business casual or higher. Okay. So present yourself professionally as if you were going into a meeting with Elon Musk or someone like that. Okay. See what else would be important. Get to the point quickly. Don't get into the weeds on the presentation. You're going to do an implementation where you get into the weeds. This presentation's for executives. They don't want to know exactly how you implemented things if you get to that point before you do the presentation. Okay? So make sure that you are being concise, crisp with your points. And I recommend that you have some sort of cue cards or something to remind you of what to say. Okay. If you just read the slides, you won't do well in the oral portion of that. Okay. That's one of the things you can get a lot of points taken off for, is reading the cue cards or reading the slides. So if you're just sitting there looking at your slides and just reading what's on the slides, I'll know when I look at your slides. Okay. You don't want to do that. All right. So that should do it for that portion. If you're not comfortable with this, you might want to practice. You might want to find someone else in the class who maybe you can give your elevator pitch to. The one thing I will not be able to do with you is review your elevator pitch ahead of time. So I'll be happy to review your slides if you bring them to me during a meeting. I'm not going to review them if you send them to me ahead of time. Okay. You can bring anything that you want me to look at during the meeting aside from your video. Okay. And any of that other stuff you can bring to me and show it to me and ask me pointed questions about it, and I'm happy to answer pointed questions. All right. And that should do it for this week's material. Good luck, and I will see you all in about a week and a half.